Hey guys, it's Baban, and I haven't been doing a lot of fan art lately, so I wanted to do fan art of something that I've been enjoying, and that thing is Stardew Valley. Now, I don't play that many video games, even though I'm into them, but I saw Stardew Valley and I knew it was going to be something that I'd enjoy because I have a lot of good memories with Harvest Moon DS. And I was super hyped to find out that it was going to be on the Switch as well, so I can like laze around and play it in bed. I was also pretty surprised to find out that I got more into befriending the characters, and these three turned out to be my favourite because I tend to like miserable characters, so I ended up having Miserable Chicken Man as the husbando. And I really enjoyed all the colours and stuff in it. God, that makes me sound like I'm 5, doesn't it? I liked all the colours. No, I enjoyed that it was really saturated and bright and colourful. It wasn't trying to be like dingy and edgy, but it also wasn't like just pastel-y and washed out either. It was unapologetic about being really bright and colourful. Even if sometimes it was saturated and colourful to the point where it was hurting my eyes a little bit, but I didn't really mind because it was so nice to look at. And something that I've picked up on in this and with other games is when there's stuff done with pixel art in games, you tend to see a certain colour scheme that repeats and comes up a lot, where the shadows tend to dissolve into this more purplish colour and all the highlights come out into a yellowish colour to contrast each other, and it looks really nice, so I guess that's why it's a thing that I notice a lot. I'm not saying that it's in everything, because I'm not that well versed in like pixel art and games and stuff, but it's definitely something that I notice, and I thought that was a big part of what made this look really good. So what I wanted to do with this was go back to using really saturated colours, which I've been trying to stave off a bit lately because I can go a bit over the top with them, but with this I wanted to have that same unapologeticness about using really saturated bright colours all over the place, and use these same colours in with the purple shading and the yellow highlights to sort of mimic the colours that are used in the art in the game. So with the drawing that I'm doing anyway, I knew I wanted to draw Chicken Man, sad tale of chicken foot, and eventually the others just kind of worked into it because I wasn't sure how I wanted to present this. So I just did a bit of a crappy sketch and sort of built it up around it and let it happen as I went along. What I did find quite funny in the game was that Jazz likes to feed the animals strange things, namely live crawfish from the river, but I decided to put pizza in instead, just to draw the whole thing together so it's not just a random crawfish. And obviously Marnie doesn't approve of Jazz trying to feed the cow pizza, which actually, thinking about it, is pretty weird because cheese. Cow cheese on the pizza? Feeding it back to the cow. I also really liked all the blue chickens. I thought the chickens were very cute. I definitely don't have a farm full of them with chicken husbando, so as I was drawing this I just thought, shove a load of chickens in. I like the chickens. I thought, because I'm gonna go with this kind of purple shading and a lot of the stuff's gonna be sort of yellowish and red and more towards that side of the spectrum, if I put all these blue chickens in, it's going to make it pop out a lot more. Something that I didn't mention about the drawing before as well is, because I'm doing a bit of a background, I'm going back to using simple SketchUp by just making really simple blocks of where I want to put everything and giving me like a base, just a flat base to work on, and then I go and add all the details in later, but it just allows me to block down the lines and the perspective so that once I have a couple of blocks down, I can figure out how to put a grid over the top of that and then where everything else is going to be placed on top of that. Which I'm still not sure if I consider that cheating or not, but I do purposely hold myself back from not going and drawing every little detail on. I just put the basic blocks down so that I can build upon it, like I said. And now I'm on to doing the line art, which I'm going to cut a bit of out because it gets a little bit boring to watch me just blocking in everything that I've already drawn. And then I'm just finishing this bit up, and then I go onto a different canvas and make a little design, like a repeatable one for the bricks, because I want something that I can like slop on top and then just change all the angles a little bit and have it all line up instead of having to go in and draw every brick. Something I will say about the line art though is that I tend to try and keep it to the same brush size for each layer, and depending on what layer it is, like if it's further forward I'll sometimes make it a bit thicker, and if it's further towards the back I'll make it a little bit thinner so that the stuff that's more towards the front stands out a little bit more. And you can see there I'm using a different repeating pattern that I also have that I've used in a different thing, so it was already something that I had ready to use, and it looks like chicken wire pretty much, so I put that down and used it as the wire in between the fence. So I've just put a block of it down, selected different areas of it, and then used the free transform to move the angles around a bit and have it have a bit of perspective to it. And because it's just plain lines, what I can do is lock the transparency and change the colour of it. So you saw before I changed it to a white colour there, so it sort of stands out a little bit more against the background, and I think I changed the colour to more of a grey colour once I've put all of the base colours in for everything, so it stands out a bit better. But understanding how to make like simple repeating patterns is something that's quite useful for stuff like this, because before I added in that brick texture and that little bit of chicken wire, it looked a little bit sort of blank, like there was too many areas where there wasn't much detail. It would have all just looked flat. Because I can use Manga Studio to make these kind of things and just pick them from a menu and slap them down really quick, it's something that's really useful when you want to draw stuff that's got like a bit more detail in, but you don't want to have to go in and like paint every little bit. So I'm trying to take advantage of that more and see where I can use it and what sort of textures I can get going on with it. I'm not sure if you can do it in other programs, because I don't really know how other programs work because I just use Manga Studio, but if it's something that is possible I would recommend looking into it, because no one wants to go and draw every individual brick, or even have to just go and put the lines down and keep poking it and erasing them to get them all right. Now what I've done with the background is blocked everything down in greys just to block everything out so that I can basically go and fill in all the colours later, and I can just use the fill tool to go and block all the different places in so it doesn't fill the entire canvas when I try and fill it. So it's all segregated in different values. Just finishing off the line art for everyone, and then we will start messing about with the colours once we got those filled in. And this is why I like using a lot of layers as well, because when you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on like this, it's way easier to select around and then go and fill everything in. So with the colours, I'm just slapping any colours on and I'm going to fix them later. I'm not thinking too much about colour schemes, which I probably should have done, because when I do big stuff like this I tend to want to get like just a base idea of the colours down first and then work on fixing them later, because when there's a whole lot of colours going on it's a bit difficult to keep everything looking nice together, so I just try and get everything down as a base first. What I also did wrong was to use the dark theme for the program, which doesn't help, because when everything around what you're drawing is dark, you tend to think when you put darker colours down that they look light and they look fine, but once you put it onto a lighter background like this, everything looks a little bit dark and muddy. So I've done a video on that before, like discussing it, so I'll put a link to that at the end, but that's something that can help a lot to help you pick colours right the first time, instead of having to go and change the contrast and brightness to fix them. Because colours are relative to what's around them, so if you've got this big dark block around them, then everything's obviously going to look a lot lighter when you put it down if it's anywhere lighter than this dark background. And you could probably see the colours flashing around a bit there. I'm sort of messing around with the contrast and the colours and stuff. What I did was I layered everything down because I wasn't completely happy with all the colours, so I layered it all down and had a mess about with all the different colour sliders and stuff to try and get it to like a brightness and sort of colour palette that looked a bit nicer and wasn't as muddy. And once I had that, I separated everything out and applied it to all these different layers so that everything's still in layers, but I've got these nicer colours. And what I'm doing now is just adding again like a little bit of painty detail onto stuff, just to give it a bit more interest and not look as flat. So I'm defining these bricks a little bit by going over those and adding a bit of weathering onto the barn, as well as onto these roof tiles, because they do look a little bit flat, and in the game it looks a little bit more beat up than something pristine, so I don't want it to be completely perfect. And also in the background, because it's really bright, especially with all these reds looking really saturated, I added a little bit of a blue like soft overlay, or I think it was maybe soft light, either soft light or hard light, to get the background to fade out a bit so it's not as contrasty. It sort of fades out into a more bluish colour so that it looks a bit further away behind the characters and doesn't distract from them as much. And something that I think I might have mentioned in another video, the way I sort of go about stuff now with colouring is to do a base layer of the base colours, and then I'll do, especially with cell shading and that, I'll do like an overlay layer, or usually the overlay or hard light, to make the shadows a bit darker and colourful. And underneath that I'll have an area of the same space where I'll put all these different little gradients on. So you can see on the chickens now I've got this shadow over the top, but I've also got this layer underneath that's got all these bright blues and this little bit of pink on, just to put some interest into the colours and not have them just one flat colour, which is something that I don't really see a lot of people do when they're doing cell shading, or maybe people that don't like putting that much detail into stuff. But I don't think you need to put that many gradients in, but just putting one or two in to break a picture up a little bit and break the really sort of blocky look on things up a bit can make it a lot more interesting. And like I say, what I'm trying to do is get something between cell shaded look and a painted look. So by adding a layer of like gradients and little painted bits of detail over the top, just brings it somewhere in between the two styles. And sometimes on that same layer or on a different layer I'll put little details on the characters like this, like some stripes on the clothes, just to give them a little bit more interest. Because especially with Marnie, she doesn't really seem to have that much detail on her clothes, and because the colours are really bright and saturated in her clothes anyway, like they're bright orange and bright green, I wanted to break them up a little bit with some white patterns on them so that they stand out a bit from the background that's got the same sort of tones and contrast. Because the more detail I put onto something, then the more it's gonna stand out and come forward and be something that you look towards, because there's a bit more like contrast between the shapes and the colours. And something that I'm trying to do here now is adding a little bit of glow onto everything, just to lead the eye around it a little bit better and change the contrast a bit more. It's something that I used to do a lot, but I've calmed down a lot with it now, and I decided with this it's still a bit too bright to be wanting to add any more glow over the top of it. Like, I've already calmed down the background and anywhere that doesn't need to really be as in focus by putting this blue over it, just to calm the colours down a bit and make them fade out a little bit. And then once I've got everything down, I'm just going to go and add in a few little like highlights and stuff, little simple little over painty details that I can add in that aren't going to be too much fuss, or I don't want to go and add on other layers to sort of make everything more confusing. Like, this is pretty much near the end of the thing, so once I've got all the colours down, everything's near enough finished, and overpainting stuff isn't going to make a mess of it, or I'm not going to need to change the overpainting, then I'll just go in and do that. So with the floor, I pretty much painted all of that because I didn't want to have to go in and do more line art and drawing and stuff. I thought it had a bit of a better feel if I just put it down as textures and brush strokes. And I also decided that I didn't like the way it looked with the black lines over the top. Like, it's far too saturated and colourful for that, so I decided to lengthen it out a bit and go and fill in the top and the bottom, stretch it out a little bit and just have it a bit faded around the edges so that it's still got the same effect, that it's not making you look up into the corners or the top or the bottom, like you're not distracted from the middle or the focus of it, but it's still not like exaggerating off into space. Exaggerating wasn't the word, extrapolating was the word. It's not extrapolating off into empty space that doesn't need to be there. And something that I usually leave to last as well is drawing the eyes in, because I don't want to get distracted by adding in small details, which shows why I leave that kind of thing to last. And we're going to draw Lewis looking at Marnie's ass, of course, because where else would he be looking? Hey guys, it's Baban. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, and subscribe for new videos on Fridays. There's links down in the description to the Discord if you want to come and chat art shit with us. And there's links to my commission info and prints and all sorts of stuff there as well. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.